Good morning, Idaho. Hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the Local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what's going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. Today, I have a lot of interesting topics to share with you all. First off, really great news. We'll have a story about declining rent prices in Idaho. After that, some technical news about INEL's Microgrid box. Kind of interesting about that. And then how Meridian and Nampa police are using cameras. That one might get into some First Amendment stuff, but it's a minor detail. And then finishing us off with Idaho's Museum of Cleaning for our funny/interesting story. Hey, glad to have you here today. Please join me for the morning banter here where I chat with you a little bit about what's going on. But if you're short on time or prefer to skip the banter, I totally understand. You can use the timestamp that's in the description to get over to the stories. For those that stayed, welcome. Glad to have you here. You can hear me rant for a little bit. That seems to be the usual bit of it, but it's the banter. That's its whole name, so it's going to be a little bit less polished, shall we say. But as for any normal Idaho conversation, we got to talk about the weather. It seems to be the case for all of it, so we'll start moving into that. Treasure Valley this last week, personally for me, I think it was really nice. That, or I'm just crazy and I've gotten used to living in an oven, because I can see the temperature gauge. It's telling me it's like 90 or whatever else, and or 80, and I'll walk out and I'll be like, oh, this is kind of nice. It's low 90s, or it's high 80s. This is really nice. I like this. And then I'm like, wait a second. Did I hear what I just said to myself? It's weird. It feels, this last week for me anyways, felt a lot cooler. The weather felt a lot nicer. But I know when I kept looking at the numbers, it was like a cognitive dissonance where I was like, the two of these do not compute. But then again, it is Idaho. And kind of on that topic, I was over in Emmett, so I don't know if the Treasure Valley got it, or the Treasure Valley, when I'm saying that, I mean like the Boise, Nampa, Caldwell, Meridian area, all that. But over in Emmett last Thursday, as of you guys listening to this, there was a huge rainstorm that just rained all evening. I think it was like at 7, 6, somewhere in there it started. And then it didn't really stop until about a little bit after 9 or something. And it was really, really nice. It was refreshing to have the rain. It was cool to kind of smell it in the air and everything, because that's that little bit of smell you get when it rains. And it was super, super nice. But it was also weird to be sitting there, and it was a sustained rain. Like, we get rain here in Idaho, for any of those that are out of state and are like, what are you talking about? We do get rainstorms here in Idaho. We'll get thunderstorms. They'll move through, but it'll probably only be for like 15, 30 minutes, maybe an hour tops, where that big thunderstorm will then move through in the middle of the summer, and then you'll just have, everything will get a bit of a dousing, and then the sun will come out, and it'll get boiling hot and humid, and it's like, stop, please. But this was like sustained. It just kept going. Maybe that's normal for over there in Emmett, and I just kind of landed in one of those periods. But I think when I was like driving back later in the evening, it looked like there was some rain. Everything was kind of moist here in Nampa and Caldwell, so I'm assuming it hit over here as well. As I'm recording this, I'm thinking I probably should have looked this up on like a weather app to verify before I talked about this, but oh well, it's the morning banter. I don't need to worry about being super precise. But in any case, it was really nice. I enjoyed it. It was cool. Granted, the event I was at, we were like dancing, but the people that we did it at, they had this really nice stand of trees, so we were able to dance underneath the trees, but then in the rain at the same time, and it was really, really nice, but it was still just kind of really surprising and weird. But thankfully, it's made this weekend cool, or last weekend, as of you guys kind of listening to this, which has been really, really nice. I think Saturday was like 80 something. I got to go for a walk early in the morning. It was so nice. I thank the Lord so much for that. And hopefully the rain, specifically coming back to Gem County and Emmett, hopefully it didn't affect the fair too much. I know that's going on over there. I had some friends that were over there with the Republican booth and stuff. And hopefully it went well. I'm assuming it was indoors. I assume the Gem County kind of has an indoor area for the fair and stuff. But in the event it wasn't, hopefully the rain didn't hold you guys back too much and it didn't get too heavy over by the fairgrounds. And keeping with the theme of kind of weather and rain and all that and everything, I was reading stories. I think I may have put in the Quickies. I may have scrubbed it. I can't remember at the moment. But I think there was a flood warning last week that happened over in eastern Idaho. Is that still in effect? If there's anyone listening from eastern Idaho, could you send me a message? Is that still going on over there? And what's going on? Are you guys getting a lot of rain or something? Did like the thunderstorms are sitting on the other range of the mountains here from the Treasure Valley from the western part? and eastern Idaho over there, you're getting a ton of rain, because I should probably, there again, have checked a weather app. But I saw you guys had some like flash flood warnings and different stuff going on over there. I know earlier in the week they had some like flash fire warnings kind of in effect for us over here on the other side of the mountains and things. Thankfully, I don't think anything happened. None of my, EMS friends or different stuff told me anything happened, but hopefully everything's okay over there. I didn't hear any reports of flooding, but there was just a warning. And I know earlier in the year, you guys were kind of having some issues with flooding stuff. So if you know what's going on, please send me a message over. Hopefully everything's going all right over there. Just a little bit of some refreshing rain, and you're having cool weather there as well. Also, and lastly, something I mentioned on Twitter that I wanted to touch on here before I wrapped up the morning banter. I wanted to thank the people that are watching on Rumble so much. Thank you for listening. Your support is awesome. And for all the people who don't listen on Rumble or don't know what Rumble is, I'll explain. They're like, what's going on, Tyler? Let me explain. I'll get there. Rumble is an application, not an application. It's a site. It's like YouTube, basically. But its main selling point is they champion that they aren't as aggressive in their censoring. So you can talk about more things rather than YouTube will be way more aggressive. So if you're getting into wanting to talk about transgender stuff, and you're wanting to talk about the separation of church and state and religion and government and some of these things that they get a little bit more into the area that YouTube doesn't like you either making fun of or talking about the negative sides of. Playing both sides of that argument, one could say that YouTube's doing that because they're just watching out for their advertisers and all about money. The other person, the more cynical person, could be like they have a motive. I personally feel towards the second one, that YouTube has a motive, but that's a different thing. YouTube is the big video platform. It is the video platform in the world, so podcast is over on there. But I also, to not keep my eggs all in one basket, we post it over there on Rumble. Well, with all that cleared out of the way, this last week or two, the Rumble version of the podcast, in any form, both on the event episode, on the main podcast episode, on the clips and everything, has just exploded, like getting over 100 views per thing. It's just been crazy. And I want to thank you guys so much. And I'm very grateful about it. But I was kind of talking to a friend a couple days about this. And this kind of bugs me because I'm a little bit of a nerd and I want to make things the way you guys want it. I don't know why. Rumble is like the worst platform for trying to have analytics. YouTube, I can like see the gender, the general age groups. I can see how long you guys stayed on the video. Yeah, it gives me a lot of analytics to know if something I did or changed is working and you guys like it, or if it's not, which is awesome. But Rumble does not give me that. All it gives me is unique views and views. A view is when a device viewed the video. But that same device can view that video multiple times and it'll show up as a view, but it won't show up as a unique view. A unique view will only be for that device seeing it once. So say I went on my phone and I watched a YouTube video and I pulled it up on my phone 3 separate times throughout the day to watch it on my YouTube, on that YouTube video or whatever. That would count as like 3 views, but that would be 1 unique view because it's 1 device. Anywho, that's only the analytics I kind of get on Rumble. And it's hard to tell where this has come from. I'm guessing someone out there has shared the podcast and on Rumble, or maybe shouted me out or something. If that's the case, awesome, cool. Thank you. Whoever that is, could you let me know? Because I can't see that. I know on YouTube, when you like share links of videos and stuff, it'll show me that so I can see where those sources are coming in and kind of discover and figure out if someone were to shout out or different things. So for all those over in the Rumble, thank you so much. But also, it'd be awesome if you could like send me a message on Twitter or email me and just kind of let me know, how did you find out about the podcast? What do you like about it? What could be improved? Yada yada. Just stuff for me that helps me to understand where you guys are coming from and why you're enjoying it so much over there. With that said, that's all I have for the morning banter, and we'll move into the stories here for the week. Now to the stories. We have less than we had last week. Last week was a super big one. I actually had to save some stories where it was like I was looking at it and I'm like, I don't want to let anything go, but I had to choose some stories that I could save for this week that were from last week. So they're going to be like 2 weeks old stories, but I still felt like they were stuff to talk about. Last week was just booked. This one's kind of booked. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 main stories. The quickies are a little bit longer, shorter. I don't know, something like that. You'll have to let me know down there. But yeah, still really busy. I'm glad that news is busy, but it also takes more time to record and edit and everything. So, any case, starting off with our first one here, Boise, huge rent decline. This comes by the Boise Dev by Autumn Robertsons. As many of you know, rent prices in Boise have been quite high for some time, but in recent months they've started to decline. In fact, according to recent articles from the Boise Dev, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Boise has decreased by 6.9% since last year, and the average rent for a two-bedroom apartment has decreased by 5.8%. Now, getting into the numbers, the average cost per month for rent in the state of Idaho was $1,275, but as of July, it has come down to $1,180. So a little bit of a drop, but it's nice. There was also a decrease in Boise, not as much though. Last year, the average was $1,397.83, and this year it was $1,341.70. So a little bit of a difference there. It's nice. It all matters. Now, as for what's causing the decline in rent prices in Boise, there are a few factors at play. The first is the COVID-19 pandemic, which led to a decline in demand for housing in Boise. Many people living in Boise have moved away during the pandemic, and others have chosen to downsize their living spaces. Other factor contributing to the decline in rent prices is the rise in interest rates. As interest rates rise, it has become more expensive for people to borrow money to buy houses, obviously. And this has led to more people choosing to rent instead of buying. This has led to some people choosing to rent instead of buying, which has also increased the supply of rental houses. Which I would say probably in the Treasure Valley, and I'm assuming the rest of the state, this is a topic that us Idahoans, I think, talk about on like a daily time frame, or the ones that like moved here from out of state, or even being like, wait, I paid that much, and then the new Californian that moved in, or I want my family member to move here, or whatever. That's how much it cost. I know it's crazy. Even with the kind of economy struggling and stuff, it seems to keep on roaring. I know we talked about it maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but they all kind of blur together. About how they did kind of, based on like the last year or two, the housing prices kind of have declined a little bit. But they're still going up again. They're not like bottoming out. Like some people wanted a complete linear, like we are going down. But then again, that's kind of how numbers work. That's kind of how economics work. Nothing's in a straight line. Even when something is in decline, like a stock's falling, it'll kind of come down and then it'll bounce and it'll come down and then it'll bounce and it'll come down and it'll bounce. And it's kind of the nature there with statistics. So maybe it'll keep going down. We'll just have to wait for this previous week's report, month, whatever. I don't know how you want to call that. But it is encouraging to see that rental prices are coming down. I do remember, I don't have it here in the show notes. You can go look out for it. But like, I think the average millennial is more likely to rent than they are to buy. And it's not always because they can't afford to buy the place, which is also a big factor, but also because millennials, which they're the main people buying houses or renting right now, kind of moving out and increasing the size of the market, they want, or more preferably want to rent because it gives them that mobility. A lot of millennials are like, yeah, I'm only going to be here for a couple of years, and then I'm going to move on to another town for another job, and then I'm going to hop to this job and that job and that job and moving around. And so they don't really want to kind of set their roots down into a place as much as previous generations wanted, which that's its own thing. And so rentals have increased in the demand for them because of that generation wanting that. I'm personally more on the fence that, local yokel Idaho. I like local things. I think it's good to find a place. It's one thing, if you haven't found a place, then yeah, go around and explore, go to other towns and cities. But being born and raised here in Idaho, I love it so much, and it's a great place. And I do want to set my roots down here. And someone can say, well, why don't you go other places? And in all fairness, I have traveled a little bit. I have traveled outside of Idaho. Don't be sad. Don't be sad. I still love Idaho. Idaho's amazing. And usually every other place I go, it does something better than Idaho. Bear with me. Don't murder me. But you pay a price for that. Say it has like a beautiful beach. Well, cool, you've got a beautiful beach, but you have tons of people around you. LA, California, where it's like, oh yeah, I have this really pretty beach and this really nice weather all the time, but the price I'm paying is there's a lot of people here. A lot of people like it. and it costs a lot. On the flip side, say you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I found a place where there's not a lot of people, but then the amenities, there really isn't a lot of stuff. Or cool, like Colorado. I love Colorado Springs. I've been there a couple times. And the weather's I enjoy it and it's nice, but it gets windy and I can't stand the wind for too long. Like, it can be windy for a bit, but then it needs to stop. Like, please, no, I don't want to hear the wind turbine of the wind in my ears. And so every other place I've gone has had a bonus or leg up on Idaho, and then has had a detractor, something that kind of takes the edge off that niceness, rather than Idaho is average. Are we the best in every category? No, we're not. I'm not going to sit there and say that. We're great in a lot of stuff. But over average, everything kind of mellows out and it makes for a wonderful experience. And that's really what I want my home where I live to be. It doesn't need to be crazy. It doesn't need to be the best, but it needs to be comfortable, predictable, and reasonable, somewhere that I can call home, right? And then also, use it as a satellite. I love to go traveling, to go outside and visit different stuff, but at least home base is consistent, average, and I don't have some big detractor that I'm always whining about. Main thing right now is just trying to find a place. That's the main detractor in Idaho, and with these rent prices coming down, that's a good sign for anyone that's trying to look to just even move out renting-wise. But moving into our next story here, and speaking of like small towns and growth, Twin Falls growth. This comes by KTVB7 by Justin Core. So as we just talked about, Idaho is growing like crazy, but specifically in this article, it talks about Twin Falls growing a ton. The town has grown more than 50% since 2000, and it is showing no signs of slowing down. This growth has brought a lot of benefits to the city, but as many of us know, it also creates challenges and frustrations. One of the biggest challenges for the population explosion is traffic. Blue Lakes Boulevard is absolutely packed during rush hour, and it's only getting worse as the city grows. Mayor Ruth Pierce says the city doesn't have much control over the state highways, so they're doing the best they can to manage the traffic with the resources that are at their disposal. Another challenge that is facing the whole state is housing, as we talked about just above. The median cost of a house in Twin Falls is more than $366,000, and that's out of the reach of many people in the area. The city is trying to help by using its federal COVID funds to build almost 80 units of affordable housing complexes, but many see it as just a drop in the bucket. Lastly, and to be expected with more people, crime has been a growing concern. Idaho State Police say that crime is up in Twin Falls, but Mayor Pierce believes that it's more about officers being very effective and arresting criminals at a higher rate, especially drug traffickers coming across state lines. She says that crime is trending down inside the city limits because of the hard-on-crime policy the town has taken. With all that said, what does the future hold for Twin Falls? It's hard to say, but one thing for sure, the city is growing, and it's going to continue to grow as much as the state has right now. Thankfully, the city is trying to address the challenges of growth and is being careful with its planning. Twin Falls appears to be on a path to continue to be a great place to live, work, and raise a family like much of Idaho. Which kind of just reiterating the stuff up there, I will admit, I need to go visit Twin Falls more. I can't name them right now. I'd love to get them credit, but I don't want to try to go find it and everything else. And when I have an Instagram page, we'll do that. But there are some great Instagram accounts that show that Twin Falls, you guys have some really cool stuff. I need to get over there. I've been dying to. I got up north, like we talked about. Maybe that'll be the next thing I need to go do. But Twin Falls looks like a super cool town to go visit. I have some friends that live there and different stuff, and they've really enjoyed living there. And people that are like, well, we didn't want to live on the west end of the Treasure Valley, and that's kind of growing and getting busy in its own chaos and stuff. But we also didn't want to be super, super far away from the Boise type of area. No offense, Pocatello type of area. And so they kind of split the middle there and said, we'll go with Twin Falls. We'll go there. It's still rural. It's kind of got this distance from stuff. The same reason I think some people picked Emmett, that a lot of people found that attractive. And it seems to continue to be the case. I mean, 50%, that blows me away. The growth, that's crazy. It's tricky. Growth is tricky. On the one hand, we want things to stay the same. I am chiefly guilty of this. I don't like change. I like things to be consistent. I like things the way they are, which then kind of does sometimes clash with my habit of wanting new things and to develop and improve the two of them more. I swear I'm a dichotomy at times. But on the flip side, we have to look at the good side of it. With that increased population means that those towns that were smaller, which is part of the appeal, can grow a little bit and maybe attract more of those businesses that otherwise wouldn't have been there. They can build out more effective infrastructure, so you won't be like, well, there was that road issue and there was that thing or whatever else. and it gives the state/city the money and funds it needs to actually fix it. Or in the case of this road, I'm hoping due to this amount of growth, and it seems to be the biggest thing facing you guys over there is that Blue Lake Boulevard, is that with that increased population, state funds will get allocated towards that, especially with the major surplus I think Little said we had. I haven't actually gone and looked at the numbers, but I'll just take his word on it for this. If we've got such a major surplus, let's invest that in our roads. I think a great investment of those extra dollars would be widening or increasing the flow rate that can head up to the McCall/Cascade area there from the Treasure Valley. I know some of you guys up there might not like that, but it's so close, and the amount of commerce that can happen, making a system where that can stay open more consistently will only increase the amount of income, the amount of businesses that can go into there. And also, I hear like the number one issue up there in Cascade and McCall is a housing issue where they're like, cool, we've got these jobs, but it's too expensive to just get builders and the materials up here to then build all these new houses and stuff. And it's just so expensive for purely the material side, not just the lack of buildings. And so with an added infrastructure through there, I think that would make it a lot easier to do that, because a lot of those that heavy industry, shall we say, could move up from Boise, or at least transport stuff up there more easily and consistently. But I've digressed at that point. But hopefully the funds will be given to that, because it sounds like it really needs, especially with a 50% growth. And I hope they'll figure it out. It seems like they're going on it there. Sad to hear the crimes kind of picked up in the sense of arrests, but it sounds like the amount of like committed crimes compared to the amount of arrests is different. I don't know. If you guys got some data on that, please send it over about like crimes over there in Twin Falls, and we can talk about that next week. Hopefully everything goes well over there at Twin Falls and everything settles out. I know it's a little difficult. Growing pains hurt. We all know that, but it should work out in the end. Moving out of the housing type of things and into some more technical stuff. I'm so excited about this story. When I was writing it, I had far too much fun. I probably made the script for this way too long. INEL's Microgrid box. This comes by the East Idaho News by staff. This last week, INEL, or Idaho National Laboratories, had a ribbon-cutting event for their new Microgrid box. Now, you probably might be asking, what is the Microgrid box? Glad you asked. The short answer is it is a portable, self-contained grid system that can be used to integrate and optimize multiple energy sources, such as hydropower, solar panels, wind turbines, diesel generators, and even small nuclear reactors. But the long answer has 3 parts. The first is a power converter that can convert DC energy power sources to AC power that can be used on the grid. The second is a battery that stores energy from energy sources and provides backup power during outages. And the third is a control system that manages the flow of the power between those energy sources I just talked about, and including the grid. For example, if the sun is shining, the microgrid will use solar power to generate electricity. If the wind is blowing, the microgrid can then go over and use the wind power to generate electricity. And if neither is working, it can pull from more reliable sources such as hydro or nuclear to fill up the slack. And if, in the event the grid does go down, the microgrid will use the batteries to provide backup power, and will also use the control system to manage the flow of power between the energy sources and the battery, thus continuing to provide power to the community it's in. The technology was developed here in Idaho, woohoo, by the Idaho National Laboratory, INEL, in partnership with the Fall River Electric Cooperative. The microgrid was just deployed at the Fall River Hydro Plant in rural Idaho. The microgrid was just deployed on the Fall River Hydro Plant in rural Idaho, and it was used to demonstrate how it can be used to restart the grid after a simulated electrical grid blackout. The process is called black starting. The new technologies showcased at the event were developed by INEL and sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy's Water Power Technologies Office, demonstrating how communities with similar resources can maintain critical services during blackout emergencies. Nearly 70 people attended the event, including representing utilities, government agencies, and industries from across the country. The microgrid in a box is a promising new technology that could help small companies be more resilient to power outages. By integrating multiple energy sources, the microgrid can provide a reliable, resilient power supply even during emergencies. So, what do you think? Did I make my script too long? Maybe I did. I don't know, but I had way too much fun writing that. I really did. I shouldn't have been allowed to. But in any case, super, super cool to hear. I know when I was like reading through it and stuff, it's cool, but it's also, I maybe you as well had the same thought. Why haven't we already done this type of thing? I'm not a person. I know a guy I'm going to have to ask that works over at one of the power companies here in Idaho, and I got to ask him about it and show this article and see maybe I'm just out of the loop on things. But it's a really cool idea that you've got this computer system. It's micronized in a sense that sits in these locations. It's kind of this self-contained system that can be plugged into the existing infrastructure and stuff and can be like, hey, this system has its battery and stuff, and so it can have this buffer that can exist. And so if the grid in a certain area, especially rural where like snow hits a power line or I don't know, whatever else, can come online and pick up the slack, and also more of an intelligent system that can be trying to predict, look at the weather, look at what energy sources it is or isn't getting. I know I was literally talking with a guy about this a couple weeks back, same guy I mentioned earlier, and he was mentioning how kind of they can pull out, and they kind of do this on a larger scale, where certain areas will then pull powers from other part of the state and then kind of adjust the flow and everything. And so it's kind of like that, but this sounds like it's at a way, way smaller level. I'm really curious to see how this will integrate with like personal people's solar panels and stuff. Because there's a concept I've heard, and I won't divert too far on it. It's called a virtual power grid. And in really, really simple terms, it's the idea of where you have all these houses now that have their own solar panels, right? And then say all the homes that have those solar panels also have their own battery banks to like store that energy. And then what you do is that all of those houses kind of have their own computer chips in all their power banks, and then they can all communicate out on the grid. And so each house ends up being its own power generation, and it can divert energy and move it around across the community. And so that's where this like virtual idea comes in, where there isn't like a centralized, okay, our power's coming from the hydro, or our power's coming from these 2 or 3 sources, and maybe some from the outside grid and stuff, and then we're trying to manage the flow of that. No, it'd be like, no, everything's communicating, everything's kind of flowing, sending over there. Your power wall in your house might be like, hey, I'm not getting a lot of sun right now, but your neighbor 2 blocks down on their solar panels is getting a ton of sun, and so the system stores their energy in your batteries, and then it can distribute it out later and then double the amount of storage capacity it has. Kind of cool stuff like that. I know they did it over there in Australia, and they had great success with it. I don't know how you'd implement that here in the US. This might be a little something like it. It's more on a larger scale than that. What they did was like on a home-by-home basis. This sounds like they're taking the existing grid and trying to shrink it down a little bit more for existing communities, but this seems like a really cool technology that they're playing with. And it's really cool that it was developed here in Idaho, that it was an Idaho worked-on project that supported Idaho workers, and Idaho can take a little bit of credit and say, hey, we did that. Moving on to the next story here and continuing with the techie theme. I swear I didn't cherry pick it. These were just here, and I'm like, cool, they're both work together. Nampa and Camera Registry Program. This comes by KTVB7 by Hector Mendez. This is one of the stories I talked about that was from last week, so it'll be about 2 weeks old, I think, at this point. So an interesting but also creepy idea coming out of Nampa. The Nampa Police Department is asking homeowners with home security cameras to register in a new program called the City Protect Camera Registry Program. The program is designed to help law enforcement and officers and detectives to gather evidence and solve crimes. The program is voluntary and homeowners can opt out at any time. However, the police department believes that the program is a valuable tool in their efforts to keep Nampa safe. The police department says they will not have access to video or images captured by the camera. The information that is collected will only be used to contact the homeowner if there is a crime in their area, and then their cameras may have the captured footage of the incident. So police will not have a live feed to your house. The program has been met with some concerns from the community. Some people are worried about the privacy implications of the program, and they're concerned that the police department won't be able to access the video or images captured by these cameras. The police department has addressed these concerns by saying they will not have direct access to video or images captured by the cameras. The information that is collected will only be used to contact homeowners if the crime happens in the area, and their cameras may have captured the footage of the incident. The police department also said that they are committed to protecting the privacy of homeowners and will not release any information about the homeowners without their consent. The City Protect Camera Registry Program is a new way for law enforcement and the community to work together to fight crime. The program has the potential to be a valuable tool in the fight against crime, but it is important to be careful when dealing with people's privacy around their homes. To register, homeowners can go to the Nampa Police Department's website and provide their address, email address, and phone number. They can also indicate the direction their camera faces and the type of camera they have. Which, when I first saw this story, I was like, no, you're not getting a live feed to my camera. I know you can ask, but no. Why would I give you live connection to my security cameras and my Nest door cam or whatever. I mean, that's already given to Amazon, right? Joking. But as I was reading through this article, and hopefully I got that across to you, the program is more to be like, hey, kind of like an organ donor. It's like, hey, if you're in a wreck, if you're an organ donor, then we know how to treat your organs type of thing. In this case, it's like, okay, cool. If you get on this registry, then we can look and see what people have opted in, and we can go and be like, hey, you opted into this program that we could have the footage from your cameras, and there was an incident that we think your cameras may have captured. Could we have some of the footage because you've been put on this, you've joined this program or whatever, which I think is actually a good way to go about it. And the more that I think about it, I think it's good that, like, hey, if the community, if there's people that voluntarily sign up and say, hey, I want to help. I want to be able to provide that footage. The camera's there. It's a resource I have. If there's a crime that does happen and maybe it was outside my front porch where my neighbor's car got stolen and their camera didn't see it, but maybe mine did, and the police come to you and see that you're on that registry and be like, hey, could we see that footage since you've opted into this? And you'd be like, yep, here you go. I think that's a really cool idea, and it allows the police force to not have to batten down everyone's door and like pass a law where they're like, you all have to give us access to your security. No. If some resident wants to and says, hey, I want to opt into this program, let me know. If I'm in the area of a crime, let me know, and I'll provide the footage that I feel comfortable providing, which I think's really good. Then again, I haven't looked at the documentation. It might not be that cut and dry. It might be like, hey, if you opt into the program, then it's in our jurisdiction now. Any of the footage that comes off your camera, and we can have it whenever we want, which I wouldn't agree with that. But if it's purely like, hey, now we know that it's an option, that you're someone interested in doing that, and then we'll notify you when that thing happens or an event happens in the area, and then you can send whatever footage you're comfortable in sending over to us that's related during that time period. I think that's a really, really cool idea. And if you've already got those cameras set up, I don't see any reason why not. Let me know down below or email me or send me something at Twitter. What do you think about this? Do you think it's really creepy and weird, or do you think it's a great idea about respecting people's privacy, but also using this new technology to catch criminals? But moving on to our next story, and keeping with the theme of cameras and law enforcement, Meridian license plate scanners. This comes by the Boise dev by Autumn Robertsons. So over the last couple of weeks, the Meridian Police Department has installed some new cameras. To be specific, they've installed 12 new traffic cameras in the city. The cameras will be located at intersections throughout the city, and they'll be used to monitor traffic and enforce traffic laws. The cameras are being installed as part of a pilot program. The police department will be monitoring the data from the cameras to see how effective they are in reducing traffic accidents and enforcing traffic law. If the pilot program is successful, the police department may install more cameras in the future. As for how they work, they're designed to read vehicles' license plates as they travel through the intersection. Once the camera has read the license plate, the system talks to the NCIS computer system, which is connected across the U.S. So if a vehicle was involved in a crime in another state, the system could alert local law enforcement. Now, with that said, the data that the camera collects is only retained for about 60 days, then it is written over. Also, it was stated that officers aren't monitoring the cameras at all times. They just get a notification when the camera/system senses something important that they think that they should know about. The installation of the traffic cams, as many of you can guess, has been met with some mixed reactions from the community. Some people say that the cameras are a necessary tool to keep the city safe. Others are concerned about the privacy implications of the cameras and are worried that the cameras will be used to track their movements. The police department has addressed some of these concerns, saying that the cameras will not be used to track people's movement. The cameras will only be used to monitor traffic and enforce traffic laws. The police department also says that the data from the cameras will be kept confidential, hopefully. The debate over the traffic cameras is likely to continue. However, the police department says that they're committed to using the cameras in a way that respects the privacy of the community. Which, call me crazy, but I could have sworn, I remember when I was growing up, and maybe this is just something my brain has weirdly shuffled around in there, but I remember hearing the discussion with grandparents or older people, and I don't know when it happened, when they started putting up those just standard video cameras at street intersections, and they're like, yep, look, it's Big Brother looking at you and everything, and I remember those conversations that came up, and I could totally understand where that came from. But then on the flip side, coming from my background where I came through school with drones, and part of when you're going through drone school, specifically with CWI, great program. If you're interested in getting your drone license, highly recommend going through the professor's Tim. He's awesome. But with that said, part of what that program went through is it looked at case law about privacy and video. And this is, to the best of my understanding, there might be some lawyers out there that would say, hey, Tyler, you're not saying this right, but bear with me if I get it wrong. Sorry about that. But if I remember correctly, how it works according to case law is there's the public domain, and then there's your privacy, your expectation of privacy. So when I'm in my home and I have the windows drawn, I have a certain level of expectation of privacy. And the door's locked, right? I have an expectation. I have taken steps to block, be it eyes, be it cameras, be it thermal, right? I have taken steps to block that from the general public and from those around me unless I let them in. And so I have an expectation of privacy. So if someone uses a technology or uses a sneaky camera that's like sitting in my room or whatever inside my clock, then that is an invasion of my privacy and I can legally go after them. But if I go out into the middle of like Indian Creek Plaza or out into the middle of Cascade Lake, right, and I decide to do something super stupid, or I'm sitting there yelling about something or whatever, and then I try to get mad at someone for videoing me, that doesn't matter. I'm in a public space. I don't have an expectation of privacy. Anyone, the police could drive by, a family could drive by, whatever, right? Anybody could see it with reasonable skill and ability, right? It doesn't take some prying method to try to see it or to get to it. It's something that's easily accessible. And so I have a very, very low level of privacy. I'm in public, as many of us talk about. And so when it comes to the stuff with like cameras and license plate scanners and stuff on streets and things, and I know some people might not like this, and I understand where you're coming from. I personally don't feel both legally and in a moral sense that it's a problem because I'm out in public. If the license plate scanner scans my license plate, or if they just had a police officer standing on the corner and they sat there and recorded it and then took a walkie-talkie and messaged it into HQ every 15 minutes, right? I don't see a big difference there. It's the same thing. I'm publicly available. That data is publicly available. That license plate can be seen because it's in public, and I'm traveling in public. So I don't see an issue with that at all, especially on public roads. Now, I can give the grounds where they're like, yeah, we want to put these trackers in neighborhoods. Well, no, because I'm getting close to my home, so I have a certain expectation of privacy that there isn't going to be police officers standing around my homes, all the curtilages, for legal people, you'll know what I mean, and watching that and everything. I wouldn't quite agree with that level, but if I'm going down Eagle Road, or if I'm going down 10 Mile, or let alone just the freeway, yeah, that be it if a camera saw me or if a police officer saw me, it's the same thing. I'm in public. It's fully legal. It's the same reason that like Waze, which is a navigation app that sits there and people can report where police officers are, right? And can report traffic things and different stuff. Police in New York, if I remember correctly, tried to go after Waze and say they were being illegal and they were disturbing the peace by it being able to report the location of police officers because they were losing a ton of speeding tickets or different things because it was allowing people to know where the police were and different stuff. And they lost that. The reason they lost that is because, be it if an app or be it if a person sat there down a couple blocks and then had a walkie, and every time they saw a police officer, like, there's a police officer at the corner of blah, 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 it's no different than the application. The application just made it easier to do that, and it made it for anybody to do that. So coming full circle to this, I personally think it's fine because it's in the public space. I'm on a public road, especially if it's main arteries. I have no issue. When you get into more small neighborhood lights and stuff, I'm like, because then, the police could more easily track where I'm going. But then again, the license plate, they already know where I live. So, it doesn't really matter that much. But like on major roads, I don't see an issue with this, especially when we're talking about like lost vehicles. Say there was a vehicle in a crime, like we could go back to the Moscow murder where they were trying to find this one vehicle, if I remember correctly. This helps them a ton. That it's not going to be reliant on some police officer sitting there and pulling a guy over for a speeding ticket and then running the plate, right? Because they can't be sitting there every single day on the street corner and have all the missing vehicles and all the crimes across the U.S. memorized. And when they see that plate, they're going to pull. No one expects you to do that. And so having these systems where they'd be like, hey, heads up, there's a like 95% match of a car that just went through X, Y, or Z intersection that according to a bulletin out in Nevada, they're looking for that car and the owner of it or whatever else. I feel like that is a good resource for them to have to fight that crime, to go after that. Now, if you have issues with the police, that's a different thing to talk about. But we're assuming that the police are trying to enforce just laws. If it's a just law, I got no issue with it. We need to be efficient at executing justice. But any case, my rant over. I think these are a good thing. It'll be interesting to see how they roll out. I know some people don't like the idea of it. If you don't, please let me know. I'd love to chat with you. It'd be interesting to hear you guys' thoughts and ideas on this as well, because that's just my perspective. Okay, moving on to our next one here. Also, sorry, I just looked at my recording time and realized I'm going pretty long here, so I'll try to wrap through these. This next one actually is going to be more like a quickie. I'm not going to give any commentary. It's just an update on the wildfire report. I could have put in the quickies, but I didn't feel like it should be in the quickies because it's kind of more of a main story. Anywho, here's your August 7th wildfire update. This comes by several sources. For those that didn't catch last week, we're in the middle of wildfire season, and thus I need to talk about the Hayden Fire, Elkhorn Fire, and a couple other fires burning in Idaho right now. This section is an update and recap of those for last week. Starting off and giving an introduction and update for the Hayden Fire. It is the largest wildfire currently burning in Idaho right now. It's located in the Salmon River National Forest and has burned over 24,000 acres. The fire is 47% contained compared to the 0 I think it was last week. The fire started on July 27th, 2023, and is believed to have been caused by lightning. The fire is burning in steep, rugged terrain and has been challenging for firefighters to contain it. The Hayden Fire has forced evacuations for several homes and businesses in the area. The next we have here is the Elkhorn Fire. It is a large one located in the Payette National Forest and has burned over 18,000 acres. As of the writing of this, the fire is 0% contained. The fire started on July 22nd and is believed to be caused by human activity. The fire is burning in dry, hot conditions and has spread rapidly. The Elkhorn Fire has forced the evacuation of several homes and businesses in the area. The fire is also threatening the Elkhorn Mount, which is a popular recreation destination. In other fires, we have the Six Fires, which is burning near Cascade and has burned over 100 acres thus far. Then there's the Park Fire near Kemlin Park, which has burned over 60 acres. And lastly, we have the Little Bear Fire near Elk City, which is a little larger at 1,600 acres burned. Point in case, as many of us know, wildfires in Idaho are a major concern, and they cause a significant damage to the state's natural resources. Firefighters are working hard to contain the fires, but the hot, dry conditions are making it difficult. For those traveling around the state, please be aware of the wildfires and take precautions to stay safe. If you want to find out more information about the wildfires, you can go to the website of the Idaho Department of Lands. Okay, so out of the fires and into the mines. The next story we have here is Bunker Hill Mine reopening on track. This comes by the Shoshone News Press by Josh McDonald. Very exciting news to hear from up north. The reopening of the Bunker Hill Mine is going smoothly. For those not following the story, the mine was in operation for over 100 years, but then sadly it closed in 1981 due to a decline of ore grades and environmental concerns, or environmentalist, the way you want to look at it there. But in recent years, there has been a renewed interest in reopening the mine. The demand for zinc is expected to grow in the coming years, and the Bunker Hill Mine is one of the few mines in the United States that has the potential to produce the significant quantities of zinc required. So the Bunker Hill Mine Corporation, or BHM, is leading the effort to reopen the mine. BHM's CEO, Sam Ash, and Board Executive Chairman Richard Williams announced last week that several projects are underway and are on track to open the mine by the end of 2024. The reopening the mine is a major economic development for the region and is expected to create over 250 direct jobs, as well as over 1,000 indirect jobs. The reopening will also be the first major mine reopening in an EPA Superfund site. In addition to the economic benefits, the reopening of the Bunker Hill Mine could have some strategical importance. The mine is expected to produce zinc, which is a critical material used in a variety of industries, including batteries, which we know we need a lot of right now, construction, and agriculture. The demand for it is expected to grow in coming years, and the reopening of the Bunker Hill Mine could help to meet this demand. Which, for those that haven't heard it, I'm going to make sure to make my spiel short because I know I have taken a little bit longer there on the Meridian license plate thing, and you guys want me to wrap it up here probably. But there were a lot of towns that I remember reading about and different stuff and seeing kind of the effects of it that up north in Idaho were mining towns. That was the main mining and logging. Huge industries that they used to be in Idaho. But then the environmentalists came in, and I'm not saying all of it was unwarranted. There were probably some mines and some forestry groups that really weren't doing a good job. Mines that were just spewing a punch of chemicals everywhere and were just destroying things left and right, and logging industries that were just clear coating and they weren't planning over and doing it right at all. But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think a lot of us here, especially in Idaho, because I know a lot of us are hardworking, blue-collared people, you need that industry, and we need that back in America, and we need that to come back, especially for a lot of these towns. A lot of these towns, that was the industry that made them a town. Like, you need people to make a town, obviously, and so you need work for those people because life doesn't cost nothing, right? You need money to pay for things, including power and food and all the different things, medical bills that come up and all of that. And so when the mines, a lot of them got shut down and stuff, a lot of these towns have just been slowly withering on the vine, for lack of a better phrase. I know they kind of got an extra injection of life into them by the COVID pandemic. And what I mean by that is like remote work, that people from bigger cities just move and they're like, I'm done with big cities. I'm done with New York. I'm done with the LA. I'm done with Portland. I'm done with all these things. I want to find the smallest little quaint place ever. And I want to know everyone. And I want away from it. And so they went to small towns and they had the remote work. And as long as they had Starlink or some internet connection, it didn't matter that, there wasn't a big industry in that town. They supplied the industry in the sense where they came in, they got their food and they got their groceries. But the amount of workers that have that, I haven't looked at the numbers, but I feel like that isn't enough to keep a town living, shall we say. Granted, I know we talked about it a couple weeks back, Idaho's population or towns or whatever is growing, so it looks like in recent months/years, that's kind of fixed itself, shall we say, but mining was a huge part of that, and I think it still should be a big part. I think Idaho can make a lot of money. I think it's good for all of us to get back into that as a state, as a community, to do mining. And it's really cool to see them doing this. I know they have a website and I've gone over to it. It's really cool. I highly recommend. You can see videos of them as they're kind of going along it, and they keep people really informed. I would love at some point, if I had the equipment and the time, to reach out to them and to do like a video where we could do like a tour of the operations they're doing up there, because it's super cool to see all the work they're doing. Sadly, I know they had to demolish a couple of like the original buildings or whatever, which is sad. It's sad. But I understand, safety and all that and everything, and needing to put new things in and code and stuff so you can get your funding and all those different things. But it's really cool to see that it's coming back to life, the mining industry in Idaho, both with lithium mines and sulfate mines, and with this one with a zinc mine coming back, especially one that was so historic that it was around for 100 years. Before you know it, we're going to be talking about Silver City opening back up. That would be a crazy story to talk about. It would blow my mind if I had to talk about that. But don't get me started on Silver City. That's another thing I will remember on way too long about. Now, moving into our second to last story here, we have Canyon County shoots down 5,000-seat amphitheater. It's done by KTVB7 by Aaron Rusby. So this is another one of those stories that was like a week or two back, but I still wanted to try to fit it in here. A proposed 5,000-seat outdoor amphitheater in Caldwell, Idaho was denied by the Canyon County Board of Commissioners on Wednesday, July 26th. The project would have been located on the land owned by the Sims Fruit Ranch, which would have included an outdoor amphitheater, cidery, U-pick orchards, and several other attractions. But it was met with opposition from residents who were concerned about the traffic noise and impact on the area's agriculture. The application by EW Real Estate argued that the venue would have been a boom to the community, bringing in tourism and supporting local communities. They presented a traffic study that showed that the venue would not significantly increase the traffic on Highway 55, and they said they would have implemented noise control measures to mitigate the impact on neighboring residents. However, the commission ultimately decided the project was not in the best interest of the county. They cited concerns about traffic, noise, and the impact on the area's agriculture. They also noted that the project would have been located in a rural area that is not zoned for commercial development. With all that said, the application has the option to appeal the decision, but it is unclear if they'll do so. They may also choose to modify the project and resubmit it to the county for approval. The decision to deny the project is a reminder of the importance of community input in the planning process. It also highlights the challenges of developing in a rural area, where there's often tension between the need for economic development and the desire to protect the environment, local culture, and the agricultural land. Which, when I read this story, I'm torn. I really am, because the idea on paper seems really cool and I like it. But then again, I have no idea how much stress that was going to put on Karcher, because it's like all the way at the end over there, if I'm remembering the application correctly. And as it stands right now, Karcher is going to have construction happening on it here soon. Yay, it needed it. It needed it like 3 years ago, but that's a different story. And then it's already struggling to maintain the flow of all the people that have homes out here and have built and stuff. And I'm leaning to say that I think they made the right decision here. On the other hand, independent of what the right or wrong decision is, when I was reading the article, there were just a ton of people in opposition of this, which at the end of the day kind of makes my argument true. If you're someone who sits there and you're involved in your local politics, you can make a change. You can make a difference. And so if you're sitting there and you're constantly grumbling, well, they put that road in and they did that thing and they put that place there and that's a stupid idea and whatever else, then I would ask, well, did you go to the city planning meeting? Did you go to any of your local county or city or whatever else meetings? Did you? Because if you didn't, I don't think I know it might be a little bit of a hot take. I don't think you have any right to grumble because you really didn't make your voice heard. You really didn't get involved. And praise the Lord, we live in a country where that's something that you can do. And now you might come back and say, well, Tyler. Little old me, I'm not going to change anything. They're just going to barrel over me. And I'm like, maybe they will. But I would argue if more people do it and it becomes a regular, consistent habit, be if you consistently do it and then your children's children consistently do it and you all consistently do it, it has a massive effect on your local politics. And then at the end of the day, the only person to blame is you and your community for making those decisions, which is a lot better to take that on than blaming someone else that you elected and then just keep cycling and revoting out and complaining, because complaining is not good. It's not good for you, period. Anywho, coming back to the topic of this, kind of torn. I think they did the right thing, but on the other hand, it seems like a really cool idea. If they could have moved it closer into town, or maybe closer to like the freeway area, maybe they're like the last Caldwell exit right up in there, maybe. I don't know. I feel like that might have been better. But it's just a hard sell if you're trying to connect anything major onto Karcher, because Karcher's taxed. And from what I've heard, talking to people and just reading things, and for good reason, the city of Caldwell is being really cautious, not pushing Karcher any further with the amount of load that it's planning in that area. It does want to allow development, and there's land being sold, and they're letting it be developed, but trying to choose things that are low traffic impact, which is good until the road kind of gets improved and they can see what the flow rate is through there. Sad to hear. Maybe they'll change around and they'll say, hey, cool, we can't do it there. We've readjusted. Can we have it over here? And maybe that'll be the angle they need to go with. Then again, it sounds like they've been in this discussion for several years and different things and back and forth. So they may have just said, nah, enough's enough, which is fair, and I respect that. Now coming to our last one and our fun one here, Idaho's Cleaning Museum. This comes by the Boise Deb by Ann Daly. Over in Eastern Idaho, there is a very unique museum and one that I know I need to drop by because I love cleaning. I know I'm weird. I know I'm crazy. Don't judge me. It's called the Museum of Clean and is home to the world's largest collection of vacuum cleaning devices throughout history. The museum was founded by Don Aslett, a cleaning guru who has wrote several books on the subject. He opened the museum in 2006 in Pocatello in a former brick warehouse. The museum collection includes over 1,000 vacuum cleaners dating back to the early 1900s. It also has exhibits on the history of cleaning from ancient times to the present day. In addition to vacuum cleaners, the museum has exhibits of other cleaning products. In addition to vacuum cleaners, the museum has exhibits of other cleaning products, such as mops, brooms, and dustpans, plus the Garden of Clean, which this one's one of my favorites here, with plants that are naturally effective at cleaning. There's also a section on cleaning techniques and a gift shop where you can buy cleaning supplies and souvenirs. Kind of funny on the cleaning supplies side. I wonder if they've got some special ones. I have no idea. Now, one might ask, what is the goal? The goal of the Museum of Clean is to highlight the values of cleanliness and to, quote, expand the scope of cleaning into areas like clean homes, clean minds, clean language, clean communities, and a cleaner world. For example, one of the exhibits in the museum shows how cleaning methods have changed over time. In ancient times, people used brooms made of twigs or straw to sweep dirt and dust from their homes. Later, they started using mops to clean their floors and dustpans to collect the dirt. In the 19th century, however, vacuum cleaners were invented and then quickly became popular as a way to clean the house more effectively. On the topic of cleaners, as mentioned above, they have different types of vacuum cleaners that have been invented over the years, which I didn't know there were these different types. They have upright vacuum cleaners, canister vacuum cleaners, and even robotic vacuum cleaners, kind of a more modern invention there. They also have an exhibit on the different types of filters that have been used in vacuums over the years. Which I swear this story was made for the funny, weird story that we put at the end of the episode here. But also, if you didn't already know it, I love cleaning. There is something intrinsic about taking somewhere that there was chaos and there was dirt and it was grimy and then you cleaned it and you polished it. And the process, I love it. And I have no doubt there's some guys like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, let's go over to this analogy here, right? You like working on your car. You get all greasy and you're sweating and you're underneath the car and stuff, but you love it because at the end of the day, when you get done, you built that car and that rumble of the engine and all the different parts and stuff, you did that. On the vice versa side, kind of the same for me for cleaning, that it makes my heart happy because the space I live in is now clean. I did something, I achieved something. I just love it. Anywho, getting off that a little bit, this is just super cool and kind of funny. If you're over there in Pocatello or if you're ever going to travel through, probably worth a visit to go see. I mean, it is the largest collection of vacuums in the world. Come on, you got to see it, right? And also kind of funny how they've kind of played it up. Like, yes, you can buy cleaning supplies at the souvenir store. I mean, we've got the cleaning supplies and we should know, right? We're the Museum of Clean, right? So who knows? Maybe you might learn some techniques to get some pesky stains that you've always been wanting to get out of that favorite shirt or jacket or whatever else. Because I think we all have that where it's like, for the life of me, just come out. And different stuff like that. But I thought it was really interesting and something worth sharing with you guys. I don't have too much more commentary to add on it, but a cool, interesting fact about Idaho. We do have the world's largest collection of vacuums. Now moving into the quickies, these are stories that I wanted you guys to hear and to talk about, but weren't worth a full discussion and all that different stuff. Moving into here with our first one, Warhawk Museum Veterans Gathering. This comes by KTVB7 by Hector Mendez. The Warhawk Air Museum in Nampa has a monthly gathering of veterans called the Kilroy Coffee Clatch. Hopefully I'm saying that right. The event started in 2001 and was just a handful of veterans, but it has since grown to become the largest monthly gathering of veterans in the state of Idaho. It is held on the first Tuesday of every month and features coffee, donuts, and stories from veterans of all eras. The Warhawk Air Museum is a special place for veterans as it preserves the personal history of the men and women who have served our country since World War I. The museum is full of interesting artifacts, but what makes it unique is the sense of camaraderie that it provides for the veterans. Many of the veterans who attend the Kilroy Coffee Clatch say that it is a great way to connect with other veterans and to share their stories. They also say that the event helps them to feel a sense of belonging and to remember their service to their country. Next, moving up into the mountains, Salmon River Log Jam. This comes by KTVB7 by staff. So the Middle Fork of the Salmon River is a popular destination for whitewater rafting and kayaking. However, the river is currently closed due to a log jam and debris from the wildfires. The U.S. Forest Service has announced that the upper section of the river upstream from the Indian Creek boat launch is unpassable and inaccessible. Boaters will have to launch from other sites that are downstream. The Forest Service is monitoring the debris flow and associated log jams. They're offering rollovers to those with a launch date of August 13th, 2023. Due to the post-fire conditions, rolling rocks, fallen trees, and other debris could be flowing anytime in the river. Boaters should be aware of these hazards and take precautions. Keeping with natural issues, algae bloom in Hells Canyon and Brownlee Reservoir. This comes by KTVB7 by staff. The Idaho Department of Health and Welfare has issued a health advisory for Hells Canyon and Brownlee Reservoir due to the algae blooms in the water. The department states that the blooms are toxic and people and pets should avoid any contact with the water. The algae blooms are naturally occurring, but they can become toxic as temperatures rise. The blooms can look like foam, spilled paint, surface scum, or or mats, and they often have a nasty odor. Certain types of algae blooms can even lurk below the water. The toxins produced by the algae blooms can cause a variety of health problems, including skin rashes, hives, red eyes, wheezing, coughing, shortness of breath, stomach pain, diarrhea, vomiting, headache, muscle weakness, dizziness, liver damage, and in severe cases, algae blooms can be fatal. The Idaho Department of Health and Welfare is advising people to avoid swimming, wading, or other contact with the water in Hell's Canyon and Brownlee Reservoir. They're also advising people to keep their pets and livestock away from the water. If they do come in contact with the water, it is important to wash your skin thoroughly with clean water. If you think you or your pet has been exposed to algae toxins, it's important to seek medical attention immediately. You can call the Poison Control Center at 1-800-222-1222. Keeping with the biological theme, I'm just a ray of sunshine right now. Idaho's first human West Nile virus infection. This comes by KTVB7 by the Idaho Press staff. The Idaho Department of Health and Welfare has confirmed the first human case of West Nile virus in the state this year. The resident, who is over 50, has been hospitalized but is recovering and being discharged home. The West Nile virus is spread by the bite of an infected mosquito. Symptoms often include fever, headache, body aches, nausea, and in some cases swollen lymph glands or skin rash. In more rare cases, West Nile virus can lead to more serious complications such as encephalitis and meningitis. The Idaho Department of Health and Welfare is urging people to take steps to protect themselves from mosquito bites, such as wearing insect repellent, covering up exposed skin, and draining standing waters around their homes. They're also reminding people that there is no vaccine for humans against the West Nile virus, but there is a vaccine for horses and to get them regularly inoculated. Keeping with all the rosy, wonderful news that I've been sharing with you here, school bus rolls over on Highway 55. This comes by KTVB7 by Zach Armstrong and Alexander Dugan. A school bus carrying 33 teenagers from the Treasure Valley YMCA summer camp program crashed on Highway 55 near the North Fork Payette River on Friday afternoon. The crash occurred at Milestone 84 north of Banks. The Idaho State Police said that 11 teenagers were injured in the crash, 7 of them critical. Other teenagers were transported to the local hospital in a, quote, in a abundance of caution, end quote. The ages of the teenagers ranged from 13 to 18. The bus was one of 4 in the summer program. The other 3 buses were not involved in the accident. The police are in the process of notifying families. The YMCA Treasure Valley president David Duran said the bus was driving back from its Horse Thief Reservoir when it crashed. He also said that the YMCA is trying to get all of its kids reunited with the parents. Duran said that the crash is, quote, one of those things you never want to see happen, end quote. The Idaho Transportation Department closed Highway 55 from milepost 79 to milepost 97, Banks to Smith Ferry following the crash. The highway was reopened and all lanes are clear as of the recording of this. Idaho State Police, Gem County Fire and EMS, Eagle Fire, Acute Rescue and Transport, Boise County Sheriff's Office, and Ada County Sheriff's Office assisted with Friday's crash. It is unknown what the cause of the accident was, but the Idaho Transportation Department is investigating. And coming to our last one here, thank you for making the whole way. If you have, thank you. I salute you for that. Soda Springs evacuation and gas leak. This comes to East Idaho News by Logan Ramsey. An Idaho Transportation Department road crew punctured a high-pressure natural gas line in Soda Springs on last Thursday. The leak caused authorities to evacuate residents from the area and divert traffic to avoid any possibility of sparking the natural gas. The road crew was replacing a speed limit sign on the 700th block of the North Hooper Road when they drilled into the ground and clipped the gas line. The crew alerted authorities and evacuated the area quickly after turning off their equipment. Law enforcement from the Caribou County Sheriff's Office and the Soda Springs Police Department began evacuating people from the area at 12:23 p.m. Highway 34 was closed about 30 minutes later, and drivers were diverted to Government Dam Road west of Highway to Meadow Road several miles north of Soda Springs. Caribou County Sheriff Adam Mabey explained that high-pressure natural gas lines, quote, put out an awful lot of natural gas, so any spark could potentially cause a bad fire incident. Luckily, we didn't have any issues like that, end quote, said Mabey. With that all said, the road is reopened and people returned to their homes at around 8:15 p.m. the same day. and wrapping up the episode. Thank you for listening to the entire podcast. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If I missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to me via email at localyokelidaho2022@gmail.com or on Twitter by tweeting me at localyokelidaho. As a one-man show, I'm not able to cover everything, but I'll do my best to cover the most important and interesting stories going on in Idaho. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now. I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.